Hello, this is Max, or the Technomancer, here doing the playtesting for Crossroads, the Technomancy update. And since last episode, I did do a rewrite of the system used by Gears for spinning. Not for spinning, for the rendering of the angle and for the animation. These gears are a bit too fast to actually observe the change, but if you look at these, it's a nice smooth rotation. What's really changed is they won't go flickering every couple seconds back to some predetermined position of 0 or 40 or 22.5 degrees, which is, I thought, a nice change. They will occasionally flicker a little bit, never more than by 15 degrees, and it's quite rare. Now, I did say last episode that I was planning to try and rewrite it so that they weren't ticking tile entities anymore. Yeah, when I said that, I forgot something rather important at the time, which is I still need to calculate the angle on the client side, which the master axis can't do for them because there's no network on the client side, so these are still ticking tile entities, sadly. But the rotation looks a lot nicer now, I think. Also, I rebuilt this thing with a little bit of technomancy so that it would give me perfect 8/8s every single time, without fail, so it's just a little redstone master axis that keeps it at constant speed, or if there's not enough energy, 0 speed, so it doesn't operate at all. It works extremely well, as you might imagine. So if we could just go back to the base, to the new base, I guess that is, you would say, which shouldn't be hard at all. We'd simply go out here, run down to this portal here. And for those who've forgotten, I just hit this button, and there we go. Home. This new home. I've been building this place up a bit since last time. Got these lovely dark oak doors, which are the best door, of course. And I've built this room, number 3, prototyping, because this episode, we're going to start using the prototyping system. Now, this room is one chunk. Exactly one chunk, perfectly along the bounds, and so on. And I've got these 2x2 squares mapped out with diorite. I would have used something like granite, but I didn't have enough, so I had to use ugly-looking diorite. I hate diorite, but I had no choice. Well, I could have used dirt, but that's even worse. No. Anyways, so there is a reason I'm building it all along one chunk, and there is a reason I've divvied it up into these 2x2 squares. Neither of those things matter this episode. Those two things only matter once we start doing fields. You can set up a prototyping room unaligned to chunk boundaries, but this one is aligned to chunk boundaries for a reason that'll make sense later on. And I've got this room, and then in the negative corner, negative, negative, and then 1 down, so negative in the Y, I've got this prototyping table, which I've crafted quite cheaply. It's well, it's not super cheap, but you only really need one. And we're going to be able to make prototypes, which are a way of condensing down entire builds into a single block and copying it very easily. That is, in fact, what we're going to do. So what build are we going to be compacting down and copying so much? Well, this. See, I said before, I came up with this whole idea for a system of magic, whereby we have a central production place, and then we ship it out to everywhere, and then everywhere it is one giant loop, and at every point we measure the amount of magic coming in. We make no assumptions about the amount coming in, we simply measure it, and then based on what we measure, we then extract a certain constant amount from the inputted beam for our usage, and then the rest we pass along. And that allows us to put magic in anywhere and take magic out anywhere. However, taking magic out requires these setups, like the one above me. This one here is actually 2 of those setups next to each other. If you see my cursor, it's moving along the line that cuts it in half. There's 2 different setups. My cursor is cutting the two into 2 separate setups there. Yeah, and I don't want to have to build a whole setup every time. I'd like to condense this, which is actually very simple and very small, down into a single prototype. Now, a prototype can be 16 by 16 by 16 of a build down into 1 block space, but, well, that should work just fine. So, Also, copying it is very cheap. Like I said, it takes 3 Copshoyum ingots per copy, which isn't it isn't super cheap, but it isn't very expensive either, considering that there could be literally anything inside this prototype and it would be copied. So, let me just grab my materials and we'll be right back. Oh, by the way, I did make this cheaper like I said I would, and I fixed all those glitches I found last episode. So, for example, this now is a different model where the feet don't clip through, and I fixed the fact that these cables made the mod literally unplayable. And of course, I'm joking, they didn't crash or anything. They were just the textures were like misaligned by 1 pixel. You know, those jokes. Never, anyways. I've just had what I think might be a rather good idea. So this detailed crafting table, right, is rather expensive. It takes 4 tin and 4 iron ingots each, which is a little ridiculous and rather justified at the same time. It's justified because this is a late game block, really. I mean, to get this thing, you don't need this thing until you're ready to unlock Technomancy, Witchcrafter, or Alchemy, which is supposed to be late game, so there's no reason for it to be cheap. But then there's this fact of, it's a crafting table, what if I want to have these all over the place? It should be cheap, right? So how do I... So that's how I ended up with this weird expense. Now, what I could do is I could make the first one rather expensive like this, and then make it that there is a recipe that requires a detailed crafting table that is substantially cheaper. That could work. And then it could require that... I suppose it would only work once you've unlocked one of the 3 crafts. Any of them at all will do the trick. Yeah, I might add that late at some point. It might not. I'll think it over. Anyways. Over. So how do we do this prototyping stuff? Well, it's actually not too complicated. A prototype will, even if we only need our prototype to be a 5 by 5 by 5 cube, it will be the full 16 by 16 by 16 cube. It's just most of it will be empty space in that case. So, because we stuck this thing here, it affects the cube of which it is the corner that is offset by -1 in all 3 coordinates from the bottom from the negative most corner. So it actually so the table itself is not actually in the cube. The cube starts here, and then it's offset down here. If that makes sense. So it starts here, and ends 16 blocks up over here, which I'm not going to count up, but you get the idea. It's a big cube. It's very big. So how do we make this prototype? Well, we simply got to lay it out. So we build what we want. Now, okay, let me start from the beginning. Ports. We make these ports like so. These things are reusable, but you're gonna need, and each prototype can have a maximum of 6 of them. Anything we want going in or out of our prototype needs to be one of these, needs to go through a port. No teleporting through any other means, it has to go through a port. And there is also a blacklist in the config where people can blacklist blocks from being part of a prototype, so server owners can stop their players from doing hacky cheaty things like using teleport pipes to teleport items in and out, and therefore create dupe bugs and create exploits and stuff that they shouldn't be able to do. Anything that goes in or out should go through a port. Alright? It's very important. As you can see, the only things that can go through are a redstone signal, and a ratiator signal can go through, so you can have decimal points and all that stuff. A gear connection. You can connect gears in it through this thing. Magical beams, those can go through, or heat. Heat can go in and out. Alright, so each port can only do 1 at a time, and a maximum of 6 ports per prototype. Now, our prototype is going to have 3 beam ports and 1 redstone port. Right? Oh, don't break. Oh, I broke a hole in the floor. There we go. Fix. So how do we want to build this thing? Well, let's just say that we have... How about we say that magic, as beams, are going to come in to our prototype from the bottom. So we say down. Now, let's see. Prototype port, beams, in, down. Now, these things are rather interesting in that when I say this thing is down, the down side of the prototype block is where things are going to connect, so we're going to send beams into the bottom side of the prototype. But on the inside of the prototype, we're going to have to connect, the beam is going to come out of the down side of the port as well. It's not going to come out the top side. Now, this thing won't actually shoot a beam. It needs to have something that can accept beams connected directly to it. It won't. This would work for inserting a beam into the system. This will not. We can't have that airspace. It needs to be directly attached. Oh, okay, right. So we go in the bottom. Mechanical. I need a lens holder. So okay. So it comes in the bottom, and then I craft a lens holder. This is a very important step. Remember, you need to craft your lens holders because sometimes you forget to create one in the off-camera jump bit where you prepare all the materials you think you'll need, and then you forget one, and there we go. Sorry, my mind is wandering. Okay, I'm going crazy. Okay. So we're just going to recreate our little setup from over there. Now, we're gonna do this, remember, okay, I forgot more, let me get some things. Okay, I think I've now got everything I need, and I'm going to speak slowly and calmly and clearly so I don't sound like a chipmunk hyped up on sugar. Okay, there we go. Much better. Now, as I was saying, we're just going to recreate the design from before with the mechanical beam splitter over here. Very simple design. And now we need the in and output. Now let's say the output is, now for sending beams out, we can actually have an airspace, but that means that on the other side, outside the prototype itself is going to need to be adjacent to a reflector. Basically, the receiving end needs to be directly adjacent. Okay? With beams. With redstone, you need to have a radiator directly measuring through it, and with heat, well, you just need a cable directly connected, and same with the rotary. You need a gear or some or axle of some sort directly connected. But beams out, that's out of the prototype. Which direction is this? Okay, north. Out in the north. That's going to be the consumed, which means yes, right. Although, yeah, if possible, I might actually, just thinking about how so far the base is mostly set up, I might want this out in the opposite direction, just because I can. Beams out south. Right, and then, yeah, just thinking. Okay, and then the unused magic is going to come out the top here, so how exactly are we going to emit it? Well, I think it would make the most sense just to prototype port beams out, up, no, not up, down. No, I'm being silly here. We need to, I'm being silly. Let me jump. Right, we can't have two ports on the same side. That's simply not allowed. It's a little bit tricky working with these ports because you always think, oh, down. That means I connect to it from the bottom. If I want to connect it from the top side, I should do top or up, right? And it's just sort of disconcerting. I'm being silly again. Okay, right. Up. It's sort of, you know what I mean, is you think, oh, if I'm going to be outputting out the top, I should be going inside. On the inside, I should be going from below, right? But no, you go inside, you go pointing down into the upside, and on the outside, it goes upwards. If those words make any sense. Okay, so what we've got here is we insert the main beam into the bottom of our finished prototype. The used magic will go out the south side, and the unused magic will go out the top. Alright, and then we just need one more, which is going to control how much are we actually going to, how much magic do we actually want. Now, the simplest thing probably would be to have me make one more port. So the simplest thing would just be to say, okay, we'll just, in place of the keyboard on this thing, we'll just have redstone in south, and we'll just have a keyboard on the outside with 15 times the power. But, and we were, okay. Okay, there we go. In our current design, there is a keyboard with the power we want times 15. So for a power of 2, we type in 30. And what I think we should do is we should have it be so that we input the power we want. Now before I could have made it in those that you input into the keyboard the power you want, and then I'd need an extra ratiator to multiply by 15. And I didn't want to do that because that's kind of, you know, not really expensive, but not the cheapest way imaginable. But if with a prototype the extra ratiator doesn't add to the cost, only the first time cost, and every one extra after that it's basically free. Only because we don't need more ratiators to make more prototypes of the same kind. Why not make it more convenient by multiplying by 15 on the inside so that the keyboard on the outside can just have the normal number in it? Does that make sense? I feel like that makes sense, but I also feel like I explained it terribly. This is one of the many reasons I don't give TED Talks. One of the many, many reasons, including I don't have anything interesting enough to give a TED Talk about, and also I don't think they'd let me. Also, I don't want to. So, there's many, many reasons. One of them is the fact that I'm incoherent to listen to. There we go. So with this setup, we would have just type in the number of the power we want. Simple as that. That should be dividing. Alright, very simple. So now, instead of having a keyboard that we'd have to manually program for every single prototype and put it on the inside of the prototype, we'll have a port so that we can have a keyboard outside the prototype that we set. And we do redstone in, on what is it, the south side? Yes, okay. So, and let's just remind ourselves, where does the magic come in? The magic originally comes in from down. Okay, we need to name this thing, and we need to also supply it with cop showing a ingots, which I forgot to grab. Basically, well, I think the nonsensical way of me explaining things will make more sense once we actually get one of these things. I feel like I should put your fears to rest right now and say that the documentation in the journal, while I wrote it, is understandable and is not complete gibberish. Okay? Don't worry. Just read the journal if you can't understand a thing I'm saying. Just, okay? Just put copshoium in the table so that we use to make our prototype. It's going to cost 3 ingots. We name it Magic Supplier in... oh, I've hit the character limit. Supply in bottom. Can I fit in the space? No. Okay. So that's fine. So we hit prototype. Prototype created. In B, in bottom. Okay, so we've got our prototype. Now, there's a few things that I should mention about prototypes. There is a finite limit on how many you can have per world. It's not per player, the limit, it's per world. Okay? So don't go making them willy-nilly. Or you can, but, well, this limit is, I think, 500 off the top of my head. It might be 300. It's either 3 or 500, one of those two. And it's not changeable in the config, it's just not. I might make it changeable in the config later on, but there's a limit. Also, Now, if you are afraid of hitting the limit, what you can do is, if you have a prototype that you don't need anymore, you can put it in this recycle button here, and it'll destroy the prototype, give you back 3 ingots, and free up a slot on how many prototypes you can have. If I were to place this prototype down and break it with my fist so that it doesn't drop an item, that will not free up a slot, and I will lose the prototype anyways, okay? You have to recycle it in this slot if you want to free up a slot. Okay? Can't stress this enough. Now, it's highly unlikely that in this playthrough we're ever even going to get close to 500 prototypes, so that's not something we really have to worry about, but on a large server, I don't know. Okay. There is a reason for this limit, and it has to do with Forge, how Forge works. Every prototype is chunk loaded. Now, when I say chunk loaded, I don't mean that the chunk we place this prototype in is chunk loaded. I mean, if the prototype is loaded, as in it is in a currently loaded chunk, then the design inside of the prototype is chunk loaded as well. And every design occupies its own chunk. So if we have one prototype being in a loaded chunk, that prototype is loading another chunk, which is in another dimension that you can't access. It's for prototypes only. This design is just the template. It's been copied over into the prototype dimension. And that one has to be loaded while the block itself is loaded. While the block isn't loaded, the design is not loaded. Okay. Also, I should mention, every time you copy this prototype, which is quite easy to do, I can just put it in this slot and hit prototype again. Oh, I need to name the copy. Sure. That also takes a slot, and I don't actually need this copy, so I'll recycle it. There we go. So, I freed up the slot again. So, yes. So, anyways, it loads a chunk. Now, Forge has a mandate on has a limit on how many chunks each mod can keep loaded. Okay, so you can there's a limit for each mod, and there's a limit for each player. So I set it up so that it uses the Crossroads limit. I could have set it up that it said that it uses the player limit, but that would also use the limit that every mod shares a player's limit. So, see me? Let's say I had 8 mods installed that use chunk loaders. They could all, instead of using the chunk loading chunk limit, instead of using that, they could say, we're going to use the limit of the person who placed our chunk loading mod's chunk loader, which would be me. And then that would take one away, and that would use my limit. And then if Crossroads were to also say, we're going to use the person who placed the prototype's limit, which would be me, and that also uses the same limit, if one of them fills up faster than the other, they could end up using each other's limit up. And instead, Crossroads uses the mod limit, which means that all players using Crossroads in a world share the same cap together. But it doesn't interfere with other mods. And that limit, by default, is 300. In the Forge config, not the Crossroads config, in the Forge config, you can turn that number up. It's 300 by default, and I now remember for certain the Crossroads prototype limit is 500, which, as you might realize, is a bit weird, because then you're thinking, won't that mean that you have 200 prototypes that aren't loaded? Well, A, you can turn up the Forge config, and B, I'm guessing you wouldn't have all 500 of those loaded at the same time. If you get to the point where you have 500 of them, quite a few are probably going to have been lost by that point in a way that does not free up a slot. So, okay. So we've got this prototype, and as you can see, the orange spots are sides that don't have a port, and therefore we can't access, and the white ones are magic ports, and then I can't really see the underside of this. Here, hold on. Let me put it here. See, there's magic there. The little magic with little specks on it, that means it's a magic in. The solid white is the magic out. And then if I were to move this thing over here, we would see that we are missing a port. What's going on here? There should be a redstone port in here somewhere, but there does not appear to be. Now that's odd. That should not be the case. There should be a redstone port here. Is it present and just invisible? Is that the case? Or is it literally not even there? That would be strange. Let me actually test this. Hold on. You know what I did? There's no bug. I'm just being stupid. I'm just being abundantly stupid. There's no bug. What I did is, you know I said you can only have one port per direction in a prototype? Port pointing this way. Port pointing this way. Slow, dramatic clap. No, sorry, not dramatic clap. What am I doing? Sarcastic clap. There we go. Slow, incredibly sarcastic clap. One of those days. No. Yeah, right. Yes, that's a thing that we wish wasn't a thing. Oh, really, what a genius I am at times, you know. Just give me a prize. Just terrific. What is this, north? No, south. No, what? I can't. There we go. It's east. Okay. Let's go remake it. Let's just redo this. Let's try this again. This time where I'm less of an idiot. Okay. Can we agree to do this where I'm less of an idiot, please? Thank you. Sorry, this was just me testing the prototype. Yeah. It took me way longer than it should have to realize I'd made a simple mistake. You see, the problem is, when I would have got something experimental like the prototyping system, I automatically assume that when something isn't working that it's a bug and that it's not my fault. I mean, if it's a bug, it is my fault, but that it's a bug and it's not just me being stupid with my using of it. Right. Okay. Magic split, and let's say used. Which way is the used, anyways? Because that's what we really need to designate, isn't it? Which way the used magic is? South. Used south. Magic split. Use south. Create. There we go. Let's try this one. And this one should have the correct ports. See, when you have multiple ports on the same side, it doesn't give you an error message. It just makes one that has a thing like that. Yeah. Is correct? Yeah, I just made a gap in the line. Oops. Is this thing still running? Oh dear, it's not. Oh dear. Oh dear, that's charge over there. Oh dear. Oh dear, right. That's the thing I forgot about before. Every time we make a modification to this system, there's going to be a gap in the magic flow. That's not a good thing. No, it's not a good thing. And there's not really much I can do about it, except make all of my modifications. No, that doesn't really help either. Yeah, I just have to be really careful when I make my modifications, don't I? And I need to test this thing, so yeah, need to be less stupid in the future. There goes the charging. Ow! Dang it. You know what I should have done? I should have made it so that if... This is fine. Replacing this with a block of wood so that next time we get charged it doesn't turn it in. Dang it! You know, there's something really, really sad about dying to lightning in your own contraption. Not sad so much as pathetic. Okay. That could have gone better. Wait, does lightning kill my items? Oh no. Oh, crap. 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 Screw it, I'm spawning it back in. We're going to end the episode there, but my prototype does work. I'm just bad at plugging it into the system. I'm getting the episode there. Goodbye.